Okay, hi, and welcome to another episode of Adventure Habits with me, David Overton, and Splash Maps. And today I am thrilled to have someone for you. They followed adventure so hard that they even joined the French Foreign Legion. First of a kind on the Adventure Habits, please welcome Dermot Cosgrove. Say hi, Dermot.
Good morning, David. How are you doing?
I'm having a great time here, and I'm so delighted to have you here for the launch of, and it's such an early launch, we haven't got one, but can you see this tiny dot behind my head? That's actually
I
Iceland.
can indeed.
And Dermot is going to walk from north of Iceland down to the south, carrying a wheeled trailer with him, and we've been absolutely delighted to support him with that. And it's the launch of that new Iceland chart map from IDNU from Iceland. It's an absolutely beautiful map at 1 to 50,000. And Dermot, you're our first customer for that map.
Well, I'm actually delighted that I'm part of that because I went to do this route in 2019, and I think I contacted you in 2019 about doing it.
It's one of the longest term projects we've ever had.
Yeah, and I think I left it so long that I couldn't get a detailed map at the time. But you did me a fantastic kind of outline map of Iceland with the trace of the route I was going to follow at the time across, and the logo of the charity that I fundraise for.
Yeah,
so I've still got that.
In that intervening time,
I haven't framed it to put them on my wall yet because unfortunately at the time I had to pull out due to injury to my feet. So I've promised myself when I've completed it, the new map and the old map will both get framed for my wall.
Fantastic. And of course, fabric maps, they don't have to be framed, but they look great when they are,
Yes, indeed they do. Yeah. No, they don't have to be framed. And as per our very first encounter several years ago now.
Years ago, yeah. Probably,
yes.
We're probably talking about 2014 or 2015 here. It was quite early in the
2015 it was, because I was
right.
A year on the job I was on when I became obsessed with finding an alternative to technology.
Yeah, and you bought a map genuinely for the purpose of escape and evasion, which for me was like a real endorsement of what we're trying to do here.
Well, it was back to old school because it went back to the escape and evasion maps of the pilots in World War II, and British Special Forces in the first Gulf War, and that was the first place I'd actually physically seen one of the fabric maps. Was when I encountered British Special Forces out there when I was there with the Foreign Legion, and went, I've got to have one of these days. And when I left the Foreign Legion, my platoon commander, one of the gifts they gave me was one of the air maps that we had used in the first Gulf. He'd framed it for me. But I thought, I've got to get my hands on one of those fabric maps one of these days. And then next thing, Googling for a work project, there was splash maps.
Yeah, it's the only way you're going to get one of those.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think there was our mutual obsession with maps kind of kicked in when that happened, because you guys were so invested in producing this for me that it was fantastic.
Well, we'd love to get the right map to the right person, and hopefully at the right time. And it sounds like it was. It does sound as if it found a great purpose for you there. I hope you didn't have to escape or evade too many times. But
that map. Those maps that you produced me are still in bug out bags in North Africa at the moment, in case we ever have to pull them out.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed they don't have to get used in that way, but it's always great to know they are, just in case. And Dermot, you've got such a fascinating background. What is it that made you want to make that extraordinary step of joining the French Foreign Legion? What were the stages through childhood into adulthood that kind of led to you
Um,
being the adventurer you are?
well, I'm from a family that were very avid outdoors people. My dad was a big hunter and fisherman. My brothers were all the same, cut from the same cloth.
Hmm.
My eldest brother is one of the early scuba divers in Ireland who turned it into a business for a while. I have another brother who served 40 years in the Irish military. Uncles, great uncles, going back to pre World War One and serving in the Somme in World War One.
Wow.
Right up to uncles who served with the United Nations in the Congo in the 60s with the Irish forces, and my brother who went to Lebanon, a couple of times on the UN missions there.
So adventure
And
wasn't a stranger to this family at all.
it wasn't really,
Yeah.
but kind of as I kind of grew up, I was a massive fan of David Attenborough, and I was a big bird watcher, and I was into snorkeling because of my elder brother, and
Hmm.
there was summers I literally where I live now um, was a big scuba diving town, and I would end up kind of down here every weekend from where I grew up, and would be chest deep in rock pools, rooting out crabs and starfish, and my eldest brother, another brother who served in Lebanon, got me into photography, and I spent my time kind of out photographing birds and wandering kind of forests and stuff like that growing up. But as I got older, kind of my dad died when I was 4 years old, and I was on the beach with my brother and sister when it happened, and my mum, and the kind of undiagnosed trauma of that
That's a
started to
massive
come
thing.
out,
Yeah.
and I really started being a bit lost. Um,
Hmm.
and I would have ended up on building sites in London in my late teens, if it wasn't for the intervention of my mum, who kicked me into college, where I played rugby. I didn't learn a whole lot, but I played rugby for a year,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
which she'll
What,
hate
what
me
what
saying.
was your subject, by the way, or do you remember?
It was construction studies.
Oh, right.
So I
Okay.
was I was actually I was learning how to build things,
Yeah.
which architecture and stuff like that I found really really interesting, but it wasn't for me. And while I was in college and growing up, because of my interest in history and my family connections, I'd read a fantastic book called The Last Adventurer by a guy called Rob Steiner, who was an Austrian who joined the Foreign Legion, and later, when he left the Legion, he went on to fight in Biafra
Yeah.
and South Sudan as what he described himself as being a mercenary of conscience. So he really didn't get paid to fight, but he was there because fighting for the underdog.
Yeah.
Um, and he's one of the base characters actually for Frederick Forsyth's Dogs of War book, because Forsyth was there at the time.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
reading that, and then in college, I bumped in. I was introduced to a guy I was in school with, who was in the Foreign Legion, and got the lowdown, and I went, yeah, I'm going to have a crack at this.
wow. So I
And
mean, that's a massive step to go from college and kind of feel that you wanted to join the Foreign Legion, because those books that you just mentioned, well, they tell you warts and all what's involved.
yeah,
And was it at all like that? Did you get that mix of mercenaries, people who are there to forget? We're always told about that in literature, aren't we? And those
yeah,
that are there to fight for something that they have a strong held belief in. Do you get the whole spectrum, or is it?
you do. Like we had when I enlisted in 1988. There was a lot of guys who had there was quite a few guys who'd been in the Falklands in '82 and
Hmm.
had left and just couldn't handle civilian life, and went off and enlisted in the Legion. And then you've got the guys a bit like me who were just lost and looking for a place or looking for something to be part of who they were.
Yeah.
And it's but then again you had famously when I enlisted and I was in the selection center just outside of Marseille, we had the three Swedes who had a mutual breakup with their girlfriends on holiday in France and decided, oh, we're joining the Foreign Legion. And everyone kind of looked at them going, oh my God. And if you're,
that's not the why we're looking for.
no, it's not. And they only lasted a couple of weeks in selection. So before they were told, look, guys, go home.
I mean, this is fascinating because we did a review. The previous episode to this one was a review of, and that was my conclusion. Was partly based upon one of the people we interviewed, but it came up many times. Dawn Smith,
Yes,
who was absolutely nailing it. Look, is it for charity? I don't believe you. We need to go for a deeper why than that. There's got to be a deeper why if you're going to do something like row the Atlantic or walk across Iceland or join the Foreign Legion. It's has to be something.
And I loved that episode with Dawn. That was a fantastic episode. I was only re-listening to it yesterday.
Oh, great, great!
Writing down my own notes.
Yeah.
So,
well, good work. Nice homework. And
yes.
But how? So you do get that spectrum then. Certainly the Swedish guys, they didn't last long. But the guys with so there were guys like you who were looking. You were looking for your why, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you find your why?
I did. I loved my time in the Legion. It was I was lucky enough because your path in the Legion tends to be, you go through basic training, and as you finish basic training, you depending on where you're ranked in the platoon, you put down your three choices of which regiment you'd like to go to, and depending on where you're ranked, you get your regiment. And I was heavily influenced by two corporals, one British, one Hungarian, who because a lot of Irish and English guys go to the parachute regiment. And these two guys were diehard 2nd Infantry Regiment, to the core, and went, you need to go to the 2nd Infantry Regiment. And they gave me long lists of explanations, and I ended up choosing there, and I got the 2 REI. And when I got off the bus, they went, right, we're looking for volunteers for the anti-tank platoons. And I had been told about these platoons, who operated from Wiley's Hotchkiss Jeeps that had been built in the 40s, brand new engines, but the chassis and the the whole outer side was bit like my Jeep was built in 1942, with a pillar bolted to the back of it where you mounted the Milan anti-tank missile launcher, and they were basically a coffee table on wheels. And we zoomed around the French countryside on exercise with these things like absolute lunatics. But the whole training was about escape and evasion and operating behind lines and carrying out reconnaissance. And it just went, this is me. I'm stuck up my hand. And as the youngest guy in the platoon, I had to put up with quite a lot of crap for the first 6 months. Until I passed all my qualifications and proved myself, and still got a lot of crap, but I got less crap than the newer guy who came in behind me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, I mean, I love the idea of because I know so many organizations that take these historic vehicles and go across the desert. What I had no idea about was that they were, until so recently, still in use.
Until 1992.
Right.
We had them we actually used them in the first Gulf War. Unfortunately, I just didn't take enough photographs during that time. But we actually used them at the start of the first Gulf War. like like a bit like the long range desert groups zooming around the desert in these jeeps
Yeah,
along the border with between Saudi Arabia and Iraq.
yeah.
Um, mapping, literally mapping Iraqi positions on the other side of the border. So they were still out there, and when they decommissioned them, there was a scramble to buy them
Yeah.
because they all had brand new engines.
Those are probably the ones that I now see at the We Have Ways Festival and
Yes.
places like that,
Yeah.
where they do the reenactments. Well, not the
Yeah.
reenactments, but they put a stand there for the
Yeah. Yeah.
for the long range desert group. Um, so Dermot, that's I mean amazing. And then by the sounds of it, you got your promotion. You got through the French Foreign Legion. How long did you stay in there, or how long did
I
you stay
was
in there?
I was there for 6 years. The normal
Wow.
contract was five,
Yeah.
but I was given the option to go overseas on a 2 year posting
Mm.
to Djibouti in East Africa, which not a lot of people will know where it is, but it's a tiny little country that's squashed between Ethiopia and Somalia, and it's key for controlling the Bab el Mandeb entrance to the Red Sea.
Ah.
Um, and it's especially key now because of the piracy coming from Somalia,
Yeah.
between Somalia and Yemen.
Well, we know
And
that because we sponsored Jordan
Jordan
Wiley to
Wiley,
row a boat
yeah,
across it.
yeah, I remember that. I actually spoke to Jordan kind of around the same time.
Oh, you did?
But yeah,
Uh,
he's absolute madman.
yeah,
Fantastic
yeah.
blog.
I just love what he's done and what he's done since.
Yeah,
It's so you were there at Babel Mendeb Strait and
yeah, and I ended up. It was at the time when I went out there. It was often referred to as the ice cream tour, where it was low intensity, nothing really going on. You wore your Ray Bans, got a tan, and looked good in uniform and ate a lot of ice cream. And as I got there, which and it was the highest paid overseas posting. But as
there are
I got
worse
there,
gigs, right?
oh yeah, yeah. But as I got there, there was kind of civil war broke out, and we ended up. The French negotiated a ceasefire, and we ended up on ceasefire observation. Um, 2 weeks out in the middle of nowhere, sitting on a hill under a tarp, making sure everyone behaved. And as that started to wind down, Somalia broke out. The UN mission to Somalia broke out, and I ended up 9 months in Somalia. So most of my second year was down there.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
So
Wow, wow.
yeah,
I mean, that's a big tour of duty.
yeah, it was because that was quite high intensity, and I was a medic as well at the time. Um, and everything between convoy escorts to you know being out in the bush on the border with Ethiopia, chasing bandits who were attacking refugee convoys.
Yeah,
Um, and there was quite a lot of fighting at the time as well. So we were on regular encounters with these guys who didn't had quite an itchy trigger finger.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, that sounds like the toughest of gigs, that
Yeah,
emerged from one of the
yeah,
mildest. But
yeah, yeah,
well, I mean, fantastic. And then since then, you've taken those skills you've learned and you apply them in security settings for clients that you work for, and that's how you came across us getting maps made professionally for
yes,
you for doing that kind of work. And the I mean, the fascinating thing is the crossover with the different adventurers like that. I didn't realize that you'd met Jordan Wiley, who's worked with us, but also Will Copestake. You've
yes. I
followed in his footsteps.
I spoke to Jordan a few times via social media. Social media has been fantastic for that because I
Mm.
spoke to Jordan a few times on social media about what he was doing.
Yeah,
Donated when he was doing these crazy marathons, kind of in Afghanistan and places like
yeah,
that.
run for your life. Yeah,
Yeah, and then when I was researching Iceland for 2019, um, I was looking at googling everything and looking on YouTube and came across these two young lads humping these massive rucksacks across Iceland, and went, well, Copstick, I've seen his name, and went on his Facebook and had some great chats with Will, and he gave me loads of information at the time. He's probably forgotten now because he's a guy who's just non-stop busy with his sea kayaking and Patagonia and making old blokes like me jealous.
I mean, makes us all jealous, and
Yeah,
the imagery, the videos that he gets back,
yeah,
and the white water that he experiences, and whatever. I mean,
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
100% adventure, and you can go the nice. He's been on this podcast, of course.
yeah,
I can't tell you which episode, but it was great, and he's you can join him for a paddle up in Scotland.
yes,
So
yes.
it's worth doing.
Well, I would hope to join him on a paddle in Patagonia actually, because that's another dream destination of mine.
That's more your ticket. Yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely.
I may have to talk to you about a map of a very long route in Patagonia at some point.
Well, that would be very, very doable, Dermot. Of course, as everybody knows, splash maps can make maps of anywhere. So yeah,
Exactly.
let's get started on it. Dermot, I brought you here for one reason and one reason only, and you know what that is. This isn't called the Adventure Habits Podcast by accident.
Yes.
And so I've asked you to prepare 5 adventure habits, and I'm thrilled to know what comes out of it. And if you could give us a
Yeah.
little bit of where it's come from,
Yeah.
each of these
Yeah.
habits, because that's the most intriguing thing for us. Okay, so
Yeah.
far away. What's your first habit?
Well, I think this has been mentioned by a few people, Jamie Ramsey and Dawn, um, which they call knowing your why, which is just for me is just your reason for doing it, and what's your real reason for doing it, because we can all tell ourselves, and for some people it is fundraising. They've I've got a friend who had a heart attack and had to have a heart procedure, and training to get back his fitness
Yeah,
after that. He's done several things to raise money for the people who helped him. You've got people who've been down the road of having to go through cancer treatment, and they go out and do charity events. But if you're like me, you know, I haven't really had. Well, I mean, I could go out and fundraise for veterans, which I have done a little bit in the US,
yeah.
hiking there. But I mean, and I raise funds for Irish Dogs for the Disabled, who are a fantastic charity
And
who
I
help.
notice it's their badge on the map
Yeah,
that we've
and
made
and
for you. So,
they literally creating change is their motto,
yeah,
because they do create change by supplying these assistance dogs primarily to kids, um, which changes their life completely. But and I've had a connection through my sister to that charity because she used to be a puppy socializer.
yeah,
But I mean, my real reason for this, and we've all got ego, um, and denying that, and even Will Copstick has mentioned this, that you can't really deny having an ego, but it's management of that ego when you're out there. Um,
that's
so
true. Yeah,
I mean, my real reason is I do it for me. I do it because I like to push my limits. Um, I like to remind myself that the 19-year-old that enlisted back in '88 is still kind of in there, and is still willing to kind of get out there and do stuff. Um, so there's that, and it's knowing that how far I can go,
yeah.
to do
So
this thing. And
so the why is a much more personal thing. It's the you are driven to test yourself, and
well,
then
my girlfriend has mentioned some probably undiagnosed ADHD, that I can't sit still and I'm a bit chaotic.
yeah,
Um,
there's a lot of that on
so
the adventure habits, that's for sure.
there's possibly an element of that in it as well. That I've got to be doing something.
Yeah,
So you know, um, it's really kind of a personal thing where I need to know if I can still kind of have a go at doing something.
yeah.
Um,
Hey, do you
and
know what? It would be great to take everybody that's been on the pod and stick them on a spectrum somewhere. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the ADHD thing is it does come up more often than not.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it is great. And we have a lot of people on the pod who are organizations that helping people with
Yeah.
PTSD, and so there's a lot of kind of impact of military times and
Yeah.
blue light times that actually lead
Yeah.
people onto a life of adventure, and
Yeah.
it's the why is getting to terms with things. And I think that's a great part of your story. Perhaps you go back
Yeah, it is, because
to your
when I
dad.
first started doing this, I wasn't in the best place, kind of mentally, again PTSD, and relationship wise, and had to justify that I was doing this for fundraising,
Mm,
purely for fundraising, when the real reason was actually being out in the wilds on my own, because it brings me closer to nature, and being a bird watcher, that you're not going to get encounters, even in the fantastic area where I live, which is quite remote for Europe. But I'm not going to, like I did in Greenland when I went the second time,
yeah.
be feet away from a muskox, and getting close up photographs of these fantastic beasts kind of in the middle of the of West Greenland.
It's
So
amazing, isn't it, when you kind of you go to places and then you meet people who've got the same thing, and that puts you in the same
yeah,
geographic location looking for the same thing. And we
yeah,
had the same thing with Andean geese, and
yeah,
we,
yeah.
I think we ended up meeting the guy that runs the fairy penguin colony
Oh wow,
down near
yes,
Melbourne,
yeah,
um, and then we got an invite over there, so we were then able to follow our kind of birding excitement from
yeah,
continent to continent,
yeah.
which is brilliant. Okay, so that's habit number one. It's about knowing
Yeah,
your
it's
why, and
it's
for you,
knowing your why, as other people have framed it, is your kind of reason, and a bit like it comes from kind of my entrance into the Legion is knowing and being honest with yourself why you're doing it,
yeah, yeah,
because when you know that, it does help kind of mentally as to what you're doing, and what
yeah,
and where on the toughest day out there, why you're doing it.
yeah. That's the purpose and everything, isn't it? Cool.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so what would be your second habit? So first habit
So
to
my
know your
second
why.
habit would be training,
Yeah,
um, and training it, training physically, because better condition you're in, the easier it's going to be. It's never going to be. It's never going to be easy. You're going to have easy days when you're out there, especially when you're doing, like my last big long one was when I spent 2 weeks in, or 11 days in Greenland.
yeah,
Um, and I had some fantastic easy days, even though I was going over very rough terrain. And then I had some really, really tough days. And
yeah,
the better shape you're in, the better you're going to make those tough days that little bit easier.
yeah,
Um, when it was still the Arctic springtime up there, and there was quite a lot of ice in areas and snowfields and stuff that hadn't melted. And just getting across those and jumping from ice block to ice block, as I ended up having to do at one point, it just makes that the physicality, just it makes it that bit easier if you've trained as
sure.
best you can for it.
And so
I mean, you're
I
never going to
in
emulate the exact conditions, but you can get close.
in my mind, knowing what you're doing, and you're dragging a trailer with you as well. Is that a piece of rope around the waist and a big tire behind you as you do your best to
um
progress yourself along?
well, when I'm at work, because we're in a remote location in the desert in North Africa, it's the base that I'm on, we've got a nice track that goes round, and I just pump a rucksack around and do laps, and just put my headphones in, and kind of because laps are just so boring when you're looking at the same patch of sand continuously.
Yeah,
I just put on the best music I can and do laps, and then when I'm home, if I'm on the road, then I'm pulling the trailer behind me with I've got a pack that's loaded with 5 liter bottles of water,
yeah.
to kind of mirror the weight that I'll be pulling, and pull that around, and then I
Any
get down.
particular track we should put in our minds as you're doing that?
Um, well, I live on the Loop Head Peninsula, which you could see from the Admiralty chart behind me, but
Beautiful.
which is
Yeah.
fantastic. And I use all these these small back roads, and I'm sure because it's the part of the cycle hub, the cycle route around here. I'm sure people would love a good splash maps of that.
Yeah.
And it's part
Yeah.
of the Wild Atlantic Way, which again that wouldn't be a bad splash map for people
But
who come along.
we'd
So
love to make maps of that as well. It's a good long route as well, isn't it? And
it
it's
is.
fantastic.
It
Yeah.
ends up being about 2,000 kilometers,
Yeah.
which for Ireland is like unreal.
Okay.
A small country, but a lot of coastline.
Yeah. Too right. Okay. So great. So we've got training as
Yeah,
your
and part
second.
of that training would be training with your gear. So if you've even if you've had your equipment for quite a long time, like I have,
Mm,
I'm reusing the same tent. I'm reusing the same stove and stuff like that. Training with it, like getting out on a hill and
yeah.
getting your tent up and making sure on a bad day that you can get that tent up and that you can get some a
Yeah.
warm
That
brew in.
nothing's new to you. When
Yeah,
yeah.
but
So it's all quite
this
worn
is
in.
yeah, and but the thing is, like familiarity can breed contempt. So you expect that gear to work, but when that gear fails, what are you going to do? And training for those eventualities, like even if you've had the kit quite a long time. But if you're brand new and you bought a brand new tent, brand new sleeping mat, that kind of stuff, it's training with them and getting used to your gear.
Cool.
So
Okay. Great.
yeah, so
So
even getting out and spending a night on the hill with your gear is kind of the ideal thing to do.
yeah, so no good just doing the press ups, the treadmills, the walking around the deserts, etc. You need to get used to your kit, make sure
Yeah,
you're
get your kit
familiar.
out.
And I
Yeah.
guess that's I'm not going to jump the gun with any of these other things, but I'm gonna no, I'm not going to guess what your next one might be. I'm going to ask you, what is your third adventure habit?
Well, it's well, so there's my two next points really tie into the use of my splash map, but research. So for me, research, I plan my trips kind of a year ahead, because of I work a month on, month off.
Hmm.
Um, so I've got to line up everything with work wise with my back to back who I work with and make sure that he's okay with me taking extra time off and coverage and all this kind of stuff. So I spend a year researching where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do. Um, and I always have kind of a focus as well about where I'm going. So Iceland I started researching in 2019. In 2017 I started researching Iceland. Um, and my kind of goal being a bird watcher was going in June to Iceland, which is prime time for all the bird life to be around there.
Mm.
So you literally you walk through tern colonies, you cross down through some of the best breeding areas for birds in Europe. Um, but I do spend like I obsess on Google Earth, looking at routes, and I'll cross over from Google Earth to OpenStreetMap and try and find these trails that would be almost, I won't say unwalked, but less walked than
Yeah,
anyone
yeah.
than other routes. So um, so researching kind of the routes, researching kind of pouring through the internet and social media has been fantastic because you'll always find someone from the area. You'll find images and of some of these regions and some of these remote spots. So research would be one of my big ones.
Okay,
Um,
and research with maps importantly, and then
and well, I would say 95% of my research would be maps when I'm
yeah,
doing this stuff,
yeah, yeah.
and how to get there.
And I guess the big advantage of the maps, because obviously you've supplied us a GPX, so that's
Yeah,
based upon the route that you've defined for yourself, having
yeah,
done that research. But I guess the big advantage of having a map is it gives you the fluidity to know what's around you to take those more minor routes, etc., as you go along,
Yeah,
or the more
and
major
along
ones
with,
if the minor ones are too challenging.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and kind of my follow on point from research would be self rescue, because as I know from personal experience in 2019 in or sorry, not 2019 but 2022 in Greenland, um, I was 9 kilometers from my finish when I ended up having fallen through ice in a remote valley in Greenland, um,
Yeah.
twisted my hip, and was stuck on the side, and with deep slushy snow, that even my snowshoes wouldn't kind of really make it through because I was just sinking in it, with an injury, and going, okay, how am I going to get out of here now? The technology plays its part massively on this, because I was able to press the SOS button on my Garmin InReach,
Of course, yeah.
um, which put me on a direct line to the Search and Rescue International Search and Rescue Center, who put me into a direct line with the Greenlandic Coast Guard. But I was able to, like, not just through technology, but from having pored over the maps and being so obsessed with the route, I was able to pinpoint exactly where I was and give them coordinates, and tell them, kind of which angle to kind of come in on, because, the cloud cover was coming down, and, I had to be airlifted out,
So you
which
could
was,
actually guide the helicopter in to pull you out.
yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. That is
And
self-rescue.
self rescue for me is everything from injuring your feet, which has happened to me.
Hmm.
How I'm going to get out of that. That, with Iceland, because some of my trail is very remote. That if I have an injury, not only calling the Icelandic rescue services, but if I have to walk off of my trail to somewhere where I'm likely to get help, one of the mountain huts, I know where I'm going, and on my splash map, all those will be handwritten in to just go, right. It's here. You need to go take a left and walk 5K. So,
And my hope is you'll finish that mission and you'll be able to wash those all off.
oh, I think that one is going to be framed, and I'll just have to order a second one for you.
Oh well, we can do those things. Once the print file's there, we can reproduce it
Yeah,
for you.
yeah,
So self-rescue, that's a great one. And what's your
yeah.
fifth and final adventure habit?
So my fifth point would be kit, because I'm a bit kit obsessed, like many of us are. So it's um, my own kit. With a lot of these, like a lot of the guys go through, guys and girls go through, um, you when you're doing these long ones, you have to think about weight, because ounces count.
Hmm.
And even though I'm pulling a two-wheeled cart, that can carry 45 kilos, which gives me, it's an all-terrain wheels, which thankfully, having an engineer brother, re-engineered my cart to take these all-terrain wheels, which are not the standard one.
Hmm.
Um, I've still got to think about weight, so I've still got to look at, my tent. How much does that weigh? How much food I'm bringing? Part of this trail in Iceland, I'm going to have to load up with water, because the water in the rivers is just so loaded with silicates that it would destroy a filter.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I was warned. I was warned by a mountain biker about this. That, yeah, you're so close to water constantly, but you're not going to be able. There's just all these silicates that get washed down from the glaciers, that it would destroy any filter that you have, and you wouldn't be able to drink it.
Wow.
So it means loading up with, I have these collapsible water bags. So it means loading up those at a stop point, and
So
hauling those.
you literally have to pick up fresh water as you go along. You can't rely upon the streams and whatever and clean up the
There's
water in any way.
Yes, some of them will be absolutely fine. I'd be able to just literally stick my cup in the water in the river and drink it.
Yeah,
Uh,
you'd think that's one of the benefits of a remote location like
yeah,
that.
as it was in Greenland, you
Mm,
could just literally drink any water you wanted up there and not have to worry about it.
mm.
But one of the quirks of Iceland is all this wash down, these volcanic sediments and silicates and all this coming down. You just you can't drink the water. Um, it paints pretty pictures in the landscape, but it's not exactly good for your kit and health.
No.
So
Right.
kit, so my stuff like that. Realizing that I need specialized. You know, every route has its quirk, and some routes just you need to have certain kit to deal with the quirk of that area.
And so the kit goes together as well with the research.
Yes, it does. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
how else would
Things
you
kind
know?
of tie into, and it all ties into the training as well, because okay, what am I going to encounter out there? Um, research as well, and I'm obsessed with contours,
Yeah.
really.
Well,
So
yeah. Well, there's a good number of those that I've counted on your particular trip. So
yeah,
Iceland, they didn't make it flat, did they? Yeah.
no,
Who
they
thought
didn't.
about designing an island entirely out of volcanic stuff? It's just a bad idea, I reckon. Just a bad idea. So we've got your 5 adventure habits, people,
Yeah,
and that's it. It's straight from a veteran of the French Foreign Legion and someone who's still practicing this stuff out in North Africa on a regular basis, keeping people safe. So
yeah.
it's about knowing your real purpose. It's
It
not enough
is. It is
to say
really
it's fun.
knowing who you are, and I'll say this as well. It's one of the things that I actually learned when I had to crash out in 2019 because of injuring my feet, and I was absolutely gutted.
Hmm.
And I was talking to a few of the outdoors people, because the outdoors community on social media has been absolutely fantastic. And I had one guy tell me, just remember, fail. First attempt, I learned.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that is one of the best acronyms that you can have, because you're not always going to succeed,
Hmm.
but what's stopping you kind of going back? Because use it as a learning, use it as a teachable moment. And when I injured my feet, I went, okay, I need a different type of boot or a different type of shoe for this. I need, I had a rucksack failure on my first time in Greenland. I went, okay, well, we're not buying that again.
Hmm.
So first attempt, I learned, and
Yeah.
if that's
First attempt.
if that's
Right.
something that I can
Yeah.
give to someone who's going to be listening to the podcast, just remember that. Don't be
That's
afraid of
it, guys.
failure, because that's how you learn.
I love it, and that's specifically tied up with don't have a fear of failure. I guess
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
FAIL.
yeah,
Okay, great. I've got another one that I heard was that you're either winning or you're learning, and you're either in
exactly.
one of those two
Yeah,
modes. You're not
yeah,
losing ever.
yeah,
And then obviously that follows with the training, the research, the self-rescue, and your kit choices as well, which
yeah,
I'm almost seeing a pyramid of things sitting on top of each other, and like the kit
yeah.
choice at the very pinnacle of that.
Oh,
Um,
yes, yeah.
and Dermot, I'm so thrilled that you've been able to help us launch this new Iceland map.
So am I, actually. Yeah,
I think,
it's
yeah, if it works for you, guys, it will work for you as well.
exactly.
There's no doubt about it. And Dermot, would you please tell us if it does break or let you down in any way whatsoever? We will dutifully pass that on to our customer base, and if it doesn't work,
I
take a different
intend
one.
on sending you lots of nice photographs with my splash map included in them.
Well, I'm expecting it to survive, and yeah, and look
Yeah,
out for those sunny days. Remember, it also doubles up as a bandana.
absolutely. Well, with having a lack of hair on my head, yeah, it may come handy.
Okay, so if you want that Iceland map, it is now launched. It's available on our website, and just go onto the website and tap in Iceland. Use the
Yep.
magnifying glass. That's the easiest way to do it. Tap in Iceland, and you will find the details of that map. Obviously, this is going to be on Apple Pods, it's going to be on Spotify, it's going to be on YouTube as well. So please like, share, and subscribe, and just let us know in the comments below what you think of Dermot's trip. And please contribute if you can. So we'll put your fundraising link underneath
Oh,
this as well,
excellent.
wherever
Thank you
we
very
can.
much. Yeah,
Okay.
it's a fantastic charity. Irish Dogs to the Disabled are an absolute fantastic charity, and they do so much good work that, I'm, even though it's my primary reason for going these places is, myself and getting out in nature. Every time I go, I will be raising funds for them.
They're lucky to have you, Dermot. And thank you so much for your generous time today. I think we'll all have learned a lot from that.
Great. Thank you very much, David.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye now.